Hello, I'm Sebastian Walker, and welcome to Al Jazeera's US Election Weekly, our roundup of the best of our US election coverage. This week, after the longest and most expensive campaign in US history, Americans finally elected their 44th president, Democratic candidate Barack Obama. As the country recovers from election fever, we take a look back at the highlights from election night and beyond, from across the country and around the world.
After a night of high drama and following celebrations in cities across America and around the world, it was a low-key morning after. President-elect Barack Obama headed off to the gym for his daily workout, while a motorcade took First Lady-to-be Michelle Obama to drop off the couple's daughters at school. Their lives are about to change radically. Outgoing President George Bush congratulated Obama, citing his historic accomplishment as the first black person to achieve the nation's highest office.
It'll be a stirring sight to watch President Obama, his wife Michelle, and their beautiful girls step through the doors of the White House. I know millions of Americans will be overcome with pride at this inspiring moment that so many have waited so long.
Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice called Obama's election an extraordinary step forward.
As an African American, I'm especially proud because this is a country that's been through a long journey in terms of overcoming wounds and making race not the factor in our lives.
In his victory speech, Obama spoke directly to the billions of people outside the U.S. who had observed the election with intense interest.
All those watching tonight from beyond our shores, from parliaments and palaces, to those who are huddled around radios in the forgotten corners of the world, our stories are singular, but our destiny is shared.
Among the names being floated for Secretary of State are New Mexico Governor Bill Richardson and former Clinton-era diplomat Richard Holbrooke. Some say Obama may ask Defense Secretary Robert Gates to stay on for a time. Illinois Congressman Rahm Emanuel is widely considered Obama's choice as White House Chief of Staff. With just 76 days to go before he's sworn in on the steps of the U.S. Capitol, Obama will have to move quickly to assemble his governing team and be ready to hit the ground running as soon as he takes office. Rob Reynolds, Al Jazeera, Chicago.
In front of the White House, they arrived for a party, a moment in history not to be missed. This is a celebration of unprecedented dimensions.
This is the man that they're all here to celebrate. Tens of thousands of people are flooding into the foregrounds of the White House. They're screaming his name and chanting his slogans. This is an incredible moment in US history.
Across the Capitol, they poured onto the streets. Here, the parties exploded outdoors.
There is just this immense sense of history right before us.
This is Pennsylvania Avenue in the Capitol. Who'd have thought the night could end like this?
So excited to be an American, and that is the first time I've been able to say this in a very long time.
They had been preparing for a celebration, but always cautiously. Within months, the White House will have new occupants and the world will have new leadership. There is much expectation. But for a few rare minutes, there seems to be little else but hope. Hamish MacDonald, Al Jazeera, Washington, D.C.
Several times tonight we've spoken to Robert Fisk, the journalist and author in Beirut, to get his reactions. They've been with us since the beginning of this special program. We now go back to Bob, who stayed up all night to watch this with us. I want to talk, if I can at this moment, about foreign policy, specifically the Israeli-Palestinian conflict and ask, where does Barack Obama go now? When George Bush had said that he hoped to have something in place by the end of 2008, that has spectacularly failed. If Barack Obama wants to take this seriously, he's got to get on with the job. He'll be dealing with the new Israeli Prime Minister. What must his first priority be?
Well, I think, to use a word which unless I took notes wrongly, he did not use in his speech just now, he didn't use the word justice. And justice is the word that you hear most often used in the Middle East, particularly by Arabs, Muslims, as something they want, even more than they want the democracy and human rights that Mr. Bush apparently put on offer for them. I was a little bit troubled, to be honest, by that quotation he made. I was being a bit cynical at this end, perhaps. At one point, and I think I've got this right, Obama said, "To those who would tear the world down, we will defeat you." It sounded like the ghost of the war on terror was coming in there, whatever that's meant to be. And I was wondering what was the identity of those who would tear the world down, because in a sense, this is the same narrative that we got in much more distorted and appalling form through the mendacity of Mr. Bush, that there was them and us, good and evil, you know, we will prevail, we will defeat them, etc., etc., etc. I'd have liked to have heard a little bit more about righting the justices or injustices of the world, which we didn't hear at all. I think on top of that, the only other thing which, you know, we're going to have to hear from him about the Middle East is the truth. And I liked the fact that he said he'll be honest with you, he said to American people. In other words, we're not going to have that same mendacious, secretive White House that we've had under Bush. But it was one of those speeches that when you first hear it and you try to apply it to the Middle East, it made you feel, well, quite emotional. But actually, if you go through it bit by bit, it wasn't quite as encouraging as it might have been. So what is he going to have to do? He's going to have to talk straight to the Palestinians and straight to the Israelis. Well, he sure didn't do that on his Middle East trip last time he came out here before the election. Let's see if it really is any different after the election.
Although there have been suggestions that when he met Benjamin Netanyahu, who could well be the next Prime Minister of Israel, is not necessarily going to be Tzipi Livni. When he met Benjamin Netanyahu, the two disagreed. So when you say he's got to tell the truth, do you think he's in a position to be able to turn around to a hawkish Prime Minister, because that's what Netanyahu would be, and tell him, you've got to be fairer, there has to be justice?
I don't think that would have any impression on Mr. Netanyahu, because that's been said to him before. I think that if Netanyahu does become Prime Minister of Israel, and of course we're going to have Barack Obama, I think that'll be the first test, and I think possibly, sadly, the Americans may fail on it, because it seems to me that American policy vis-à-vis Washington and Israel is so set in the concrete of uncritical support. And we know the lobby groups in Washington and how they operate, and indeed the lady from the Arab American Committee made that very clear. It's going to be very difficult to break out of that. And you know, Obama's record, and it was one of those Iranian students that pointed this out, is not a terribly liberal one on the Middle East. He's not as open for negotiation as other people and his supporters appear to think. I think we need a little bit more caution, a little bit less emotion about how we regard the Obama presidency to be, and particularly that speech. As I said, the word justice, unless I missed it, was missing, and I would like to have heard it.
Yeah, he still refers to Hamas as a terrorist organization. He says that he will sit down and talk to people of influence around the world, and that includes the Middle East. Hamas is undoubtedly influential. Can you see any chance of him sitting down with Khalid Mashal or somebody like that?
Look, I think Obama, if he's going to deal with the Middle East, and as I said earlier, I think he's pretty much figured out. He's a bright guy. His book was excellent, and he wrote it himself. I think this is not a guy who's unaware of what's going on. He's not a George Bush. He's not a Dumbo. But does he really want to do that, or is he going to concentrate on the unity of Americans? You know, at the beginning, when he made his speech, at the beginning of it, he said he sort of made the election victory. It was a victory because he was an Afro-American, because he was a black man. But I think he got the victory partly, and perhaps mostly, because of Bush's catastrophe in Iraq and Bush's catastrophe in Afghanistan, as well, of course, as the financial collapse. So again, I mean, yes, could he sit down with Hamas? No. Netanyahu would kick up such a stink if Netanyahu becomes Prime Minister. But at the end of the day, if Obama wants real change in the Middle East, He's going to have to talk to all these people. Will he do it? I somehow doubt it, I'm sorry to say.
Barack Obama's hometown still throbs with excitement and pride that in recent days the eyes of all have been on Chicago, the city that residents believe brought Obama to the attention of the nation and the world.
He's going to be a very competent man who's going to work to solve our problems in a rational way in which to improve both America as well as the world.
We all saw in him not a messiah, but a hope, a different kind of politician.
The Palestinian-Israeli question is one that president after president has wrestled with. And Rabbi Arnold Wolf is not overly optimistic that things will suddenly change for the better. His synagogue is over the road from Obama's house, and he says he's one of the wide circle of people, Jew, Muslim and Christian, that Obama has consulted on the issue.
He knows everything I know, but he's very cautious, to the point, I think, of excessive caution, because he's not going to lose the Jewish vote. And therefore he is, while he knows the condition of the Palestinians and that it's intolerable, he moves very cautiously on it.
When we send our young men and women into harm's way,
Obama was not as cautious on the question of withdrawal from Iraq, for the past 4 years being a vehement opponent of the war. But the president-elect is not opposed to all foreign intervention, arguing there should be more forces stationed in Afghanistan, that deployment in Pakistan cannot be ruled out, and insisting that the US military has a role to play in international humanitarian crises. Historian Timil Black agrees with this point in particular. He fought in the Second World War, he says, to make the world a better place. And this idea, he insists, is why Obama's victory was so important.
Not just for him or for the black community, but for the status of the United States in the eyes of the rest of the world, that now will not be able to accurately charge the United States with hypocrisy about the idea of democracy.
And Al Kindle believes the journey about to begin is one that the world as a whole must share.
We're setting precedent. This is a whole new journey for us all, and we all are searching for where that would be, and we're looking at Obama to be the light to help us see our way.
The light that in post-election euphoria is blazing, the most daunting task of a new administration, to keep it shining in the future. Mike Hanna, Al Jazeera, Chicago.
Rural, conservative America, and a new reality is sinking in.
What little we know about this guy is precisely that he is a radical.
Talk radio spews its rage. And in Galion, Ohio, Republican volunteer John Swain packs up after a disappointing campaign. Worried about the future, but bearing no ill feeling towards his new black president.
I'm not prejudiced. I always thought that Colin Powell would be, a logical choice. But apparently he didn't see fit to run. But no, I have no problem with an African American being the president.
Just outside Galion, we came across the birthplace of a man called Warren Harding. You can see there's nothing particularly remarkable about the house where he was born, but he went on to become president of the United States back in the 1920s. At that time, the Ku Klux Klan was strong, and nobody could have imagined that an African American would ever become president. On the nearby Selman farm, they're loading the grain harvest. The family has worked this land for 7 generations. Baptist Republicans who value God and country, wondering if they can trust Barack Obama to lead this new America.
Part of me wants to. Part of me questions whether he really can grasp the whole concept. I know there's problems with old America, obviously. I just think we need to be very careful and consider the good of the whole.
Barack Obama says he'll reach out to people who didn't vote for him, but who also love this land, just as they must now come to terms with his leadership, with such challenging times ahead. Barnaby Phillips, Al Jazeera, Ohio.
It's another day in Cesar Sosa's African dance class for kids in Salvador. The children, all black and from poor neighborhoods, are learning the rhythms. Talk of how an American politician could affect their lives has probably never happened before. But now that's all changed, as the impact of Barack Obama as president is starting to sink in.
Obama is not president because he is black. He is president because of the power of his proposals. And that is an example to every black kid from poor areas in the world that he or she can grow up to go to school, a university, and have goals.
Brazil's population has one of the largest numbers of African descendants in the world, and the majority live in Salvador, first arriving here as slaves in the 16th century. Any Tuesday night, the Mass at this Church for the Black People, as it's called, has an African flavor.
This church was built for slaves, by slaves, hundreds of years ago, but it's still being used today here in Salvador. And the ceremonies that you see taking place here today, you won't see anything like it anywhere else in Latin America.
So it comes as no surprise that this country, and particularly Salvador, is taking stock of what a black president could mean to them.
Obama is not only going to influence the U.S., he will influence the politics around the world, and especially here in Brazil.
Few believe Barack Obama can directly affect policymaking in Brazil, but it's clear his victory has already had a major impact.
Black children that do not understand politics now see Obama as president on the TV and realize that someone of their color is president of the most powerful country in the world, and these kids will say, I want to do it too. I can do it. I hope to be president of Brazil.
Now America's new president-elect provides a perfect example of turning that hope into reality. Gabriel Elizondo, Al Jazeera, Salvador, Brazil.
Thanks for watching our weekly roundup of the best of our US political coverage. And don't forget, you can always stay up to date with news and events at our website, www.aljazeera.net/English.